random live video, not scheduled, not your normally scheduled program. But we're going to talk about fuses because um, I've had some stuff on my mind for a long time, and I've been doing some experimentation and stuff, and some digging and some studying, and um, it's time. It's time to get this out there. We're going to discuss fuses today. So y'all get your questions ready, all right? What's up, guys? Be there in 1 second. What's up? Mama D in the house. 15 days of Christmas. Hey man, look. Just had some shit to talk about. Get her done. Get to that. What's up, guys? What's up? Yeah. So, this is not a scheduled live. I don't expect a lot of people to show up. Maybe some will, maybe some won't. All the rules apply, though. If you ask questions, I will stick around to answer all of those questions. But tonight, it is a Wednesday night, third of the way through the month of spend money. And I wanted to talk about something. So, and Bobby, you ain't even right, man. I know. It is what it is. So, we're going to be talking about these things tonight. Yeah, A&L fuses. This is the most common fuse in car audio anymore. These guys. And I'm going to get into it a little bit because I've watched some different videos of different people. Watched Low Voltage's video several times, actually. I watched it back when it came out, and I watched it a couple more times to make sure I'm not missing anything. And I think I picked up on some interesting information. And I respect the company, and I respect their video very much. But we're going to get into that. So here's the thing. Most people have been running these things in their car forever, right? You go and order the ones with the name printed on them, and they're usually more expensive than the ones without the name printed on them. Enter whatever name it is you want to print on them. But the question is, are they better? Are they worse? Is there any difference between the one without a name and the one with a name? And is there any difference between between what name is on there? You know how I am about brands. Yeah. First of all, I don't believe there's any difference in the name that's printed on the fuse, obviously. I mean, stickers will gain you, 5 dB, but in this case, I don't think that's actually the case. However, that's not the all important thing to understand. What's important about these things, see, this one's busted open. That's kind of convenient. Though it did this on its own. Uh, this is an inexpensive, standard run of the mill Amazon. I'm trying to pick it apart here the rest of the way, which is not hard. Okay, fuse. So inside that fuse, this one isn't blown. Yeah, it came apart. And I can tell you where this fuse came from. This fuse came from this guy's fuse block right here. Yeah, the one that says a certain name on the front right there. This fuse block melted in this cat's vehicle. I made a video about this a while back, but that melted, right? But this isn't the important part. We'll get to that in a minute. There's a whole lot of shit happening in this video, so you guys pay attention. Okay, Michael Smith has already made a statement. That's cool. But we're going to get to that, Michael Smith. Now, this is what's inside the damn fuse. Okay, when you get the ceramic and the plastic or the fiberglass or whatever it is off the fuse, you end up with this part. And this is the important part. It's not the material that's on the outside of the fuse. It's not this plastic. It's not that ceramic. It's not the fiberglass. It's the thing on the inside. So here's the key, right? Look at this. Look how thin this is. See the thickness of this material? Okay, now remember, we're bringing in current on this thing right here with this big old thick lug, nice chunk of copper right here. All this material in this here, this big old thick copper wire, we're bringing it in here and we're telling it to go through this. Okay? So since we already know we're going to lose some voltage and some power trying to do this, right? The question is how much? Now, what elements can you see? You can see the general shape, and that tends to stay the same. From A&L fuse to A&L fuse, they're all shaped like this, okay? The internal part, the fuse link in the middle, is simply the narrowest part of that fuse. This is where all of the control over how much current you can pass without blowing it, this is where that happens, okay? One of the other things I noticed, though, in this style is you have the screw hole right here in the center. That's the rivet hole for both ends of that are in the center. And if you notice, that thins the material down on the ends here a little bit. So it actually kind of constricts the material a little bit because you have less material because of that hole. That's one design element. But the ones that I want to point out today are the ones I think are really important. The thickness of this material this way, the way you guys are looking at it, and the material that it's made out of. I think that the higher quality units are going to be, plated or tinned copper, either pure copper or tinned copper, and or something similar to that. Very controlled, very good quality, high conductive material, and the cheaper ones are not going to be so. Now, why ceramic, fiberglass, all those materials for the outside of this? One of the main reasons is what you're looking at right here. I pulled this apart with my fingers because it fell apart after getting exposed to a lot of heat. That is the main reason. I should not be able to take this apart with my fingers. Okay. Something like this is actually ceramic. I got this in shipped in the other day. And after looking it over, it's a very high pitched click. Let's see this one here. Yeah, it's a totally different clocky sound on that. The weight of the plastic fuse versus this one is about twice as much weight. This is definitely a different material. So why would you want ceramic again instead of plastic? Or in some cases, fiberglass is a good one too. It's because it's not going to deform when it gets hot. It's going to continue to protect this piece of uninsulated metal. Um, Ultimately, though, what determines how much voltage you get through, how much resistance a fuse has, is this. Now, on Glow Voltage, on their video, I was able to see the key thing that caught my eye was, do I have it still? I have it somewhere stashed. Was how thick their fuse metal is. And let's see if I can go back and pull up a shot of this right there. So let me pull up the second screen real quick. I'm going to get to you guys' comments and questions here in just a second, so bear with me. I want to show you what my working theory is on this, and it is a working theory, so this is not 100% for sure, but I don't think I'm too far off, so let's keep that in mind. Now, if you look at the fiberglass fuse that he has in his hand right now, that's one of the glow voltage fuses. Okay. And we compare that to the same material here. You can see that that blade on that fuse is about twice as thick as this is. Also, take note of he has 4 of the rivets instead of 2, and the way they're positioned. So this material has a lot more metal material going through here than one with the rivets in the middle. That's going to create a bigger chunk of metal going into the fuse itself. And that big old thick chunk of fiberglass is definitely going to make that fuse more stable. In the event that it gets really hot or blows, it's going to keep it all contained better. Now, there is a downside to that. If you pay attention to how thick that sucker is, it might not work you may have an issue working in certain types of holders, but I doubt it. What I like about this, though, is the fact this is plated or tinned copper, a solid chunk of tinned copper. It's very thick. It actually looks like it's folded in half and then cut. If you see there's a seam down through here, I'm not 100% sure on that, but is it a good fuse? You're damn right it's a good fuse. Okay, here's another thing to notice is see how small the fusible linkage in here is? I think it's that thin because it's also very thick the other direction. So that thick piece of metal required a skinnier cutout for that 500 amp fuse. That's another thing that tells you that that material is really thick. And the one he's testing it against is something like the one that I have in my hand. So again, you're looking at a difference between a thick piece of metal and a thin piece of metal, and a better quality piece of metal versus probably much cheaper, less controlled alloy here that's going to have some resistance. Now, I can't test the resistance on the glow fuse, and I'm not set up to show you guys what I get from this. Not really. But I can test it and tell you, and you'll have to take my word for it. This fuse right here, I want to throw it on here. And with my multimeter, really? Hang on a second. Okay, there's 0. Is this one blown? Not blown. That's why. Let's test the ceramic one real quick. It's a control. Okay, this ceramic one is showing 0 ohms of resistance. This guy right here. And let's grab this one here that's been cooked pretty good. Super cheapo. It is also showing 0 ohms of resistance, but I don't have the equipment that he had to test with. So my accuracy of my little cheap Harbor Freight meter is not going to be nearly as finite as his. And also, this is showing 0 ohms of resistance. Uh, what does that translate to in reality? I don't know. But we tested it on the little meter here. So they all show 0 ohms of resistance on my little cheap Harbor Freight meter. Now, here's the thing though, when you start heating something up, the resistance will increase. And so if you've got a crappy connection, like this guy did right here with this thing, then, after it starts heating up, which it will, because he was also using CCA wire here, which is really good for destroying cars and fuse blocks and things. But not only that, the connection worked its way loose. The problem was the plating came off of this fuse block. And when that plating started coming loose, this connection here got loose. And when that connection got loose, it started to corrode and all of that. And then the heat and the corrosion and everything got looser and more corroded. And before you know it, you had, 5 million degrees on the fuse. And the fuse did not blow. This fuse did not blow. It did fall apart, but it did not blow. This thing just completely disintegrated. And this is why we're talking about this. He had the cover on it too. See, there's the cover. It melted the whole end off the cover there. Why is a good fuse block important? Why is a good fuse important? Let's look at some of the comments here. Bobby said regular A&L and mini A&L. I think it depends more on how much current you're trying to pull. Mini A&Ls have a top out point, whereas A&L fuses do too, but it's much higher. We're going to be talking about mega a little bit here in a minute, though. Okay, Michael. Michael says, Bobby. Michael says fiberglass fuses are the best. Okay, fair enough. Fiberglass or ceramic fuses, I would say, are the best because they can contain the madness whenever it gets stupid hot. But they're not necessarily going to give you that maximum conductivity over another type of fuse because the conductive part isn't the casing. It's that part that goes through the middle. And it don't matter whether you wrap this with fiberglass, plastic, ceramic, or cat's ass, it's going to have the same conductivity through it. This is the part that makes the conductivity happen. And so that's kind of that. So understand that, yes, I agree, fiberglass and ceramic fuses are a better choice. But understand why. That's the important part. I don't think I own a single GP fuse. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't run them. I just never have bought any. So there's that. Actually, I take that back. I do have a couple somewhere. But to be honest, those GP fuses are simply just regular old fuses with GP on them. Nothing special about them. They do have a ceramic fuse, though, which is a good quality fuse. So, you can go to Glow Voltage, pick up one of their fiberglass fuses. It don't matter. The point is the thickness of the metal is the key, and also what that metal is made out of is key. Sky high fuses are good low resistance. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This was a sky high fuse. this one. And that was the fuse holder it was in. You saw that already. I ain't saying that any brand is bad. I'm just saying that pay attention to the equipment, not the name that's printed on the equipment. Okay. Everybody sells junk. At least pretty much everybody sells junk. But everybody can also sell really good stuff. It just depends on what you're looking for. And just because it costs more doesn't make it better. It's a metric that we often associate with better quality, but it's not always the case. Bobby said, make sure anchor screws are tight. If they're loose, it will arc and catch fire. Damn sure can. Oh, that's something else we wanted to talk about too, is the failure of the fuse. How they fail and how that failure is contained. Because that is a thing. It's a very relevant point. What's up, Niles? That's incorrect. It's thicker because I have 500, 400, and 500 amp fuses that are made out of the same thin material as that. That's a 500 amp fuse, and I've got some 500. I've got some 650 amp fuses, and the blade is still the same thickness as that. What changes is the middle part where the fuse happens, this part in the center. That part will change thickness for higher amperage. But the thickness of the blades stays the same across one fuse manufacturer's lineup. They won't change. For example, their 500 amp fuse probably has the same thickness of the blades as their 250 amp fuse. But again, I'm just clearing shit up. I'm not letting it slip. I'm going to let you guys know what I think. And if anybody thinks I'm wrong about any of this, by all means, let me hear your argument. I will love to address it. Thank you, sir. Glow Voltage has an interesting video about fuses. Found out some interesting stuff about scar fuses in particular. I was just referencing that, so it's actually on the screen right now. We have watched that video many times. Yeah, that's the other thing is amperage. But the reason it took less amperage to blow the scar fuse wasn't because it was misrated. It was because heat built up. So if you have, like I said, if you have bad conductivity, you're going to develop heat. If you develop heat, you're going to make it even less conductivity, and you're going to melt the thing down, or you're going to blow the fuse. One of the two things are going to happen. That's not how fuses are supposed to fail. They're supposed to fail from overcurrent, not from over temperature. However, a ceramic fuse, if it's over temped, won't do the thing where it falls into pieces. Okay. That's a really good thing about ceramic. It maintains its shape, even whenever it's way over temperature. And yeah, these little inexpensive ceramics I got are definitely ceramic. However, I don't think that actually helps anything. I think the important part about most fuses that happen to be ceramic is that thicker material, that thicker metal and better metal. It isn't the ceramic that's important, it's the metal. Ceramic is a name that's thrown on there to be able to sell more of them, you know. And in this case, this is a cheap fuse with a ceramic body. So it meets the criteria. It's a ceramic fuse. But is it any better than this? Probably not. As far as conductivity and all that, it's probably not going to be any different whatsoever than one of these little cheap black fuses. The difference is the body material. So it won't melt down as quickly, but it's still not going to give you any more conductivity. That doesn't mean that there aren't ceramic fuses out there that will give you more conductivity. There are. But those same fuses could also have a plastic body and still perform the same way. That's what I'm trying to point out. Let's see here. Absolutely, it took less amps to blow it. It blew it like 360 amps. 360, 365, something like that. But honestly, I'm not going to complain about a fuse blowing. I'm going to complain about a fuse not blowing and a fuse that's dropping voltage. Those are the things that I can't deal with. I can replace a blown fuse. You're absolutely correct, Dubby. Had higher resistance versus the other fuse. He only tested 2 fuses. He tested a cheap ass fuse from Scar and one of his one of their fancy fuses, fiberglass fuses. Let's see here. SMD fuse holder, and even those expensive fuses have zero concerns. Sure, yeah, like I said, here's the thing: if you're fusing high enough to where you're not ever going to blow fuses, that's not the point of the video. Okay, that's not really the point we're making tonight. Tonight, what we're talking about is resistance in the fuse. So what I want you to do, and I'm sure it's fine, but take your SMD fuse holder, and the fuses that you're running. Just check your voltage before the fuse bank and to a ground, and then check it after the fuse bank to the ground and see if there's a drop over the fuse bank. See if that voltage drops any from before the fuse and after the fuse. That's the question. Does it drop? And you got to check it in 2 different times. You got to check it like at idle, whenever you're pulling a small amount of power, and then crank the system up and check it again and see if the voltage is the same across both of them. That's a key. And then also check the temperature of that bank. If that bank is getting anything up over about 120, 130 degrees, it's causing resistance, which means it's fighting voltage. That's a big deal. They should never get really hot for any reason. If they are, you got broken stuff. You got problems. You have a bad fuse. You have a bad fuse block. You have bad connections. You have something wrong. That fuse should never get over 130 or so degrees, ever. In my system, I've checked my temps on all of my fuse banks throughout during the show when I'm giving it platefuls of spaghetti, and I never see over about 125, 130 degrees on any of my fuse bars or any of my bus bars anywhere on the vehicle. I go around with a temp gun and check all that stuff on a regular. So if you're seeing more than that, that's bad, because that means you have resistance, and resistance means you're losing power. Thanks. Is his stuff consisting bad? I'm not sure what your question is. Will said Glow Voltage uses industrial grade stamped fuses, multi blades of element making it thicker. Yeah. The center is the part that's the most more narrow, because in order to blow it, it's rated amps. Right. Absolutely. 100% agree with all that. And that's the key. That's what makes the difference. It isn't the body of the fuse. And the reason I'm on you guys about this, okay? What I don't want you to do is go searching for ceramic fuses and buying a ceramic fuse, because you're not getting what you think you're getting. You're getting a fuse that is in fact a ceramic fuse, but it's pretending to be an awesome fuse by simply wearing a ceramic jacket. Okay. You got to look for fuses that have that nice thick blade so that you're not losing power there. Whether it's ceramic or fiberglass or plastic, doesn't matter. And also, holy crap. What's up? Emmett dropped it. I do have a taco. I do have tacos.
Crushing on these tacos, we buy the fiesta. Guac on the side, man, you know it's the best. Lettuce and salsa, stack it high, make it pop. Crunch in my mouth, can't stop, won't drop. Sliver scissor in, flavor's cone is so sweet. After one taco, I'm in for a repeat. Bite after bite, got me dancing in my seat. Hitting up the taqueria, can't face defeat. Taco love in every single bite. Feeling good, every feast all night.
Deadpool girl, man, she's awesome. Thank you so much, sir. You are awesome. Emmett Bishop. Yes. Looks like a whole lot of people got a membership today. Debbie's in the green team again. Hell yeah. Uh, Bobby said he thinks that people should automatic. Or Frank said, I think when people get a membership, they should be given to the people that were watching the show first. Yeah, W was on. Yep, W was here first. Let's see here. Resistance creates heat. Yes. Um, that's not a bad idea, man. Using dielectric grease on connectors under the hood. Not a bad idea. For the most part, I would say probably 99% of the time, that's a solid plan. But again, it's all about the conductor. I mean, think about what we're doing. Like I said, you're forcing all of this current that goes through this big old chunky chunk of copper through that tiny little piece of metal inside there. So that metal has to be on point. That metal needs to be made out of some good stuff. Let's see here. Location. I don't know what Young said. Obviously popped up a thing, but it doesn't show up as a thing. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Yes, 100%, dude. I check for loose connections. Okay, so here's my routine. Uh, my vehicle, if I'm not using it, is always on charge. I've got the bank charging right now. I've got a 1 amp charger that sets on it and it charges it all the time. Um, the day before the show, I pull all my covers, go around and hand check every single connection from the battery all the way to the amplifiers. Every single connection. This is the day before the show. Um, if there's any doubt whatsoever, I put a wrench on everything and see if I can move it a little bit. I check them all, especially the ones in areas that vibrate. I lay down under the vehicle several times a year and check my power runs from the front to back and make sure they're not getting in any trouble. I don't check them before every show, though. Then the day of the show, that morning, I go in the amp rack and one more time and I go around checking every connection again because I don't want to miss anything and have anything messing up. I visually check all my fuses, check all my fuse connections, everything. Pull on wires, try to turn them and twist them and see if they move all the way through the system. And then after the show, when I get home, I usually crash, but the next day I go out there and do a test again. I go around and check every connection again. So I do that at least once, usually twice before a show and after a show, every single show all year long. Now, most people haven't ever checked their connections since the day they made them. Uh, so I think I'm doing pretty good. And have I ever found a loose connection? Yes, I have found loose connections. And it was because I was tightening up something and forgot. I tightened up this and this, but I forgot to tighten up that. And going around and checking everything, I found it. And I was able to tighten it up and it never caused any problems. So most of the time, though, no. Once you've had something nailed down for a while, it typically doesn't really change after that. But I still check them. Because the last thing I want to happen is shit to fail while I'm at a show. Because I'm in there, dropping pulling 1,000 amps from the front, between 600 and 1,000 amps and burps from the front of that vehicle to the back. And I'm pulling, 1,600 to 2,000 amps off that back battery. I don't want anything to break while I'm in the vehicle, messing with a person in the vehicle, having fun, not paying attention to what's going on behind me. I want to know that it's going to be solid. I don't want someone to go screaming, running around the vehicle, telling me my shit's on fire or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very anal about it. Yes, the conducting material is absolutely the most important part. And like I said, having that cover on it, that just gives certain sellers the ability to charge you more for the cover. It doesn't really do anything towards helping you. I mean, I can put this piece of a material in my fuse bank and it would work just like any other fuse until it blew. So the question becomes, well, why did they put the cover on there? Well, one, you see how thin this is? It don't take much to deform that. Also, it's conductive. We don't want things touching that and touching the ground and blowing shit up. But the real most important reason is whenever this fuse reaches a point to where it does fail, they want that failed material, that liquid metal, and that spark and liquid metal and all that stuff to be contained inside this block so that it doesn't cause problems elsewhere. Um, you don't want that 2 or 3 thousand degrees, and yeah, it gets that hot. 2 or 3 thousand degree molten metal from this piece breaking, dropping through a piece of plastic into your fuse block or whatever, causing problems or shorting out somewhere, and a fuse not being able to do its job, causing a bigger problem. You don't want that. That's why there's a cover on here. Now, the plastic that they use, these cheap ass fuses, is fine for that. It actually handles that quite well. You'll very rarely see a blown fuse where there's actually, like, this fuse is blown. It's a blown fuse. But you can see, although the back, let me get the light just right. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. The back, okay, see how it's kind of deformed a little bit? It's kind of got a bow to it. And the front looks a little wavy, especially around these rivets. See how it's kind of got a little bit? That's because that rivet got hot and the plastic, melted and deformed a little bit. But ultimately, this plastic performed exactly the way it should have. So this worked fine as far as being a fuse goes. Now, with ceramic or fiberglass material, it's not going to deform at all. And so it's going to stay structurally solid even after it blows. That's the big advantage of these types of materials is the blown state. Now, while it's still operating as a conductor, those materials are really irrelevant. They do keep the whole thing kind of stiff and keep it from getting broken, and they also insulate the thing. But I wanted to talk about mega fuses. Give me just 1 second. I'm gonna look them up on here because I've got, and again, there's good and bad mega fuses. Okay. So they're not all created equal. Let's have a look over here. Let me pull this up real quick. I wanted to talk about this. So these are mega fuses. They're slightly smaller. They're maybe 3/8 of an inch shorter than A&L fuses. These are 400 amps. So a couple of the things I want to point out. This particular batch, the thickness is important. They're not all that thick, right? Maybe a tad bit thicker than the cheap A&Ls, but they're not all that thick. But notice where the rivets are. The rivets are on the sides, so there's more material going through the center there into the fusible link, and also it's all contained inside there. And I would say that plastic, maybe that fiber impregnated plastic, which means it's not going to melt like other fuses are. I do like the fact that they show you where to go right here. They actually show you that it is 0.3 whatever, was that 0.3 millimeters thick, 0.03 millimeters thick. I don't know those weird measurements. I only understand American. That's 3/4 of an inch. Okay, is that what that says? 3/4 of an inch and 2.71. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it shows you the damn measurement. 0.03 whatever is right there. So that's cool. That's a nice feature. But the one thing about these fuses are that most of the automotive world now is using that style of fuse. They do not use A&L style of fuses. And I think it's just the overall construction. One of the things I noticed, though, let me go back over here. You see how short the distance is from the post right here over to the center. There's not a lot of metal between that hole and that body, right? Um, I think that makes a difference. Whenever you're dealing with when you're dealing with running a ton of current, 400 amps through there, I think that distance between those holes is a big deal. And they're a little bit shorter. I think that actually helps. Also, whenever there's a bolt and everything on here, you pretty much have nothing that's sticking out in such a way that it's going to possibly be easy to short out. I think that the mega fuses just might be the better choice uh, for car audio, especially under the hood or where you've got wires running outside the interior. I think that may be a better choice because that's what the manufacturers are using for a lot of their fuses or that style of fuse. For that reason, it's under the hood. It's being exposed to the heat, the grime, all the stuff. The water, the salt water, all those materials, all those things that typically make electronics that we add to a vehicle get destroyed. Well, that's kind of what they're there for. So under the hood, I think maybe the Mega Fuse is the better choice. That said, though, they're not all created equal either. There's a whole lot. There are really good ones, and then there's also total crap. Same way it is in the world of A&L fuses. So there's that. Let's see what else is going on in here. W said, nope, I'm potato. Dielectric grease, loose connections. Yeah, I agree. But I wouldn't do that because your post, your connection, your posts are not designed to carry that much current. And I think you could end up developing too much heat in the hardware that holds the fuse. That's sketch, is what I'm saying. Red Pill said, is Gary feeling okay? Has Bobby taken his temperature? All the impromptu live streams. My life is impromptu, my friend. ISIX. I have DD 1506 subs with a 1600 watt amp. So two 15s and a 1600 watt amp. I go to a 250 McMahon alternator. Will this be okay with stock battery till I get an excess one? Lithium is not an option because it's a single cab. Yeah, lithium is still on the table, bro. They have lithium batteries that'll fit in very tiny spaces and shapes. But I'll point out this. Your 1600 watt amplifier is going to be pulling 160 amps. A 250 McMahon alternator, probably replacing something that was maybe 150 amps or 170 amps. That's going to give you 100 to 125 free amps of power. You're pretty close to making the right amount of power with that. Now, the thing about the AGM battery is it can only be charged at like 30 to 50 amps of charge at one time, which means you can only realistically ask it to produce 30 to 50 amps continuously. And that's only if you're able to keep feeding it power back into it. So going with another big battery, like changing out that battery, is not going to help you any. That's what I'm saying. As long as your stock battery is in good condition, it's relatively new and in good condition, it's going to perform just as well as your excess power battery that you're looking at. It won't say excess power on it, but it will still perform similarly. provided it's an AGM and not lead acid, not flooded lead acid. That makes a big difference. Let's see. So as long as it's an AGM battery, you don't need to replace it. You could add a second battery, depending on whether your vehicle has room for a second battery location under the hood. That would help you, but you don't have to spend the money on one of those. A nice AGM from Walmart is going to perform 99% as well as that excess power battery. So you know, I'm just trying to keep you from going. You ain't going to, when you go spend the money on the excess power battery, you're not going to notice anything change. You're just not. You're going to have a pretty battery under the hood, but nothing's going to change because you haven't really done anything. You just traded for a brand name. Adding a second battery will give you twice as much C, so you'll be able to charge it between 60 to 100 C or 100 amps instead of 30 to 50. So that's going to help you. But changing that battery, unless it's a crappy battery or a flooded lead acid battery, is not going to help. Anyway, I think you got one. I got the communication there. Let's see here. Jay Shipes. What else we got? Excellent. Excellent. You're doing good. You're on the right path. Just don't spend no money you don't have to on a battery that's not going to help you. That's all I'm saying. No. What's up, Stu? How are you this evening? We're talking about fuses and batteries, apparently. We're always talking about whatever, man. Les Claypool. Real Cisco said, how do you feel about circuit breakers? I've used them. Yeah, I've actually got one in the front of my Tahoe that I use to separate my two charging systems. I did not think that was going to last long at all, but it still works perfectly. So I'm kind of impressed with that. I figured that was going to, the first time I did a show, I was going to shake and bake that thing if I hooked it other. But I've run a whole show with both batteries, with both charging systems together, and I actually ended up blowing two fuses, but I never tore up that breaker. That breaker never unset it. It works exactly the way it did when I put it on. I will say this about those breakers is they tend to, two things. One, they tend to open at lower currents than they're rated for. So you want to buy one for more current than you actually need. Two, they also tend to get weaker over time and tend to trip easier over time. They tend to get easier to trip. Beyond that, not really an issue. Here's the thing, though. You think about the parts and how important the metal is and all that on a fuse. You know, how important that this piece of metal is the right alloy and all that stuff. And think about what's going on inside a breaker. There's a whole lot of tiny moving parts in there. And at least one or two of them are trying to carry 300-400 amps of current. You know, just saying, I don't know what's happening in there, but I'll use one. I've used them in the past. Winona had a big brown beaver. That's awesome. You guys. SMD ceramic A&L all day. Not bad. Let's go look him up real quick. We'll go dig in. I like Steve Mead. Let's see here. Fuses. Okay. All right. Let me get my little get this thing up where y'all can see what we're doing over here. I'm over here on Steve Mead's page. So here is our ceramic A&L fuses. These are Looks like they're 100 amps listed right here. Choose options. Let's choose a 500 amp. So two of them for 24 bucks. That's not terrible. And I wish I had a way to look at that closer to see what the thickness looks like. But I will say this, it looks to me like 10 copper bars throughout. So I would say those are probably very solid. And from the limited view I'm getting here, which I can't get it any closer, it looks like these may be a thicker metal too. So a good quality metal and a thicker metal is good. Uh, I don't know. See, those are showing rated at 300 amps in that picture. Um, Maybe. It's hard to say. But you can't go wrong with it. It looks like a decent fuse, but I couldn't tell you for sure without being able to see a whole lot more stuff about it. But the thing I'm pointing out is just because it says SMD on it doesn't make it good. Um, Keep that in mind. Don't ever judge a book by its brand name. Uh, and just because it costs more doesn't make it good either. That doesn't mean that it isn't good, but you just got to look at what you're getting. They do have the same riveted positions as the other fuses, and it looks like they're probably ceramic, which is a good thing. I mean, like I said, ceramic contains heat better. It won't deform and pop apart and leave your stuff, exposed to being shorted out and whatnot. So it's good for a fuse, but the question is, does it conduct better? And it looks to me like it looks to me like plated copper or tinned copper. So knowing Steve, it probably is a solid fuse. And knowing Steve personally, I would say it's probably a solid fuse. Semi personally. So yeah, not a bad choice. Um, and trust me, I pick on him too. Let's see here. All right. So Stu says, so who's using fused based on wire size and who is fusing based on current demand? Now that's a trick question there, Stu. You're dropping it on the crowd. I'm gonna let y'all answer, Stu. I'm not gonna tell you the right answer. If you don't know the wrong answer, you're gonna have to step on your own peckers. Stu's laid it on the table. Y'all answer that question. I want to hear what y'all have to say about it. Dave Boykin recently found your channel. Bought the iCrimp last weekend. That thing is a beast. I know, right? I'm very impressed. Um, I took it down to my buddy's shop one day, and he has a car audio shop, and I took some lugs and wire with it. I didn't want him to be like, I don't want to use any lugs. I took some with me, and we crimped some lugs with his hydraulic crimper, and then he crimped some with the crimper that I got in there. And he wanted my crimper. He tried to steal it. So here's the thing about the hydraulic crimper: one hand on one handle, one hand on the other handle, and in your third hand you're trying to hold the wire in the crimper, and in your fourth hand you're trying to hold the lug on the wire. And the handles are about 10 inches long, so you're sitting there doing this, and which means you're trying to use all four of your hands. Well, that crimper that I've got, it's bolted down to the bench. Take one hand, stick the wire and lug in it. The other hand, you push the handle down. It's made for a human being, not an octopus, okay? That's one of the biggest things about it. Um, okay. Forgot to add 2001 Silverado with a 4.8 and a new lead acid battery. Yeah, if it's an AGM, it's about as good as what you're going to buy with excess power. If it's a flooded lead acid, um, not. It's not as good. It won't conduct as much. Don't get me wrong, an AGM or flooded lead acid battery will dump a ton of power. They won't take much in though. And that's why you start off with great voltage and all of a sudden it just falls and it won't ever come back up. It's because no matter how big or how many alternators you put on there, you can only put so much amperage in a battery at one time. That's just the problem with AGM batteries. So you can put 500 amp alternators on there, and if you're pulling more power than those alternators are creating, your voltage is still going to fall. In your case, you're limiting yourself to a single or two AGM batteries potentially, but you have enough current coming from the alternator to support the load without having to rely on a battery to back it up. If you ever go any higher than that, you're going to need to upgrade battery. Look into check out Big Jeff Lithium. That battery is fairly thin and can fit in some pretty tight spaces. So, and it would be perfect for supporting what you're trying to do. It would be the choice. Keep the battery you have under the hood and add that Big Jeff battery back there somewhere under your seat or behind your seat somewhere, and hook it up as close as you can get to your amplifier. You're going to see a lot of improvement with that. Along with that high output alternator, you'll be able to carry quite a bigger system with that. I would recommend trunked under lithium, but those batteries are just too big for what you're trying to do. You need a thin battery, and that's what that Big Jeff battery is. It supports around 3,000 watts pretty easy, and it's relatively thin. So it may be the perfect choice. If you do buy that, be sure to use my discount code CAE, and you'll save money. I don't know how much. I can't remember. It's different for everything on his site, but you will save some money. The Extreme actually puts out more than the AGM. They'll put out, yes. Like I have an Odyssey Extreme under the hood right now. And it puts out a lot of power, but it's a matter of putting it back in. Turning electrical current into a chemical storage takes time. Okay, to put that power into the battery, you have to change it from electrical energy to chemical energy, and the process of changing to a lead acid chemistry, changing that into chemical energy is slow. All right, it can discharge it quickly. It can turn that chemical energy into electrical energy fast, but it can't take the incoming stuff quickly. That's where lithium is so much better, because it can turn that electricity going into chemical energy very, very efficiently. That's why it's so good. It ain't about how much power it can put out. It's about how much power it can take in. That's the key. What's up, loser? Let's see here. I've used a breaker as a switch. Yep, that's what I'm using it for. Absolutely. I've seen it when they blow. Some people can't figure out why. Just reset. For the most part, yeah. But once you pop them 3 or 4 times, they get to where they pop a lot. So if you do run into that scenario, if you have one that actually opens, it's not going to take quite as much to open it the next time. That's what I've seen in the past. Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, Glow Voltage has he's saying Glow Voltage has those in a 4-pack for about the same amount of price. And I don't know, I would probably choose the Glow Voltage ones because I can see how thick those things are. I'd probably pick those over the SMD fuses because of the thickness of the metal. The quality looks equally as good, but that thick metal is going to have better conductivity and going to lose voltage less. What does ceramic do for a fuse? Yes, Mellow is correct. They don't deform when the fuse gets really hot. and they don't break apart or melt and come apart whenever it blows. They contain the blown fuse better. It's a better material. It's not like God on a fuse, but it is a better material for the job. So if you have the option, fiberglass or ceramic, both more expensive materials to put on a fuse, they will perform better than plastic on a fuse, but they don't actually help the conductivity of the fuse. That comes down to the metal type and the metal thickness. That's mainly what we're talking about tonight. And you are correct. They do hold up to the heat, yes. Uh, just watched your fuse holder video. I'm running the exact same Amazon fuse holder with charm. Yeah, I'm looking at switching over. I probably am going to switch over to mega fuses for my underhood fuses. I think they're better suited for that environment, and on the average, I think there's a better selection of quality fuse holders in that style of fuse out there. The automotive world hasn't gone, oh, we need to sell millions of cheap ass versions of this now because everybody wants this. That hasn't happened in the mega fuse department yet. We're still selling stuff that actually is rated for the power that it says it'll do. So we haven't really run into a big downhill slide where the quality drops and the prices and all that stuff. That big sea of madness of car audio stuff. As soon as you go from welding wire to car audio wire, now there's just tons of cheap ass crappy car audio wire out there. It inundates the market and becomes the problem. That's just the way it is in this environment. Stu says ceramic is really good insulator of heat, extremely good insulator of heat. We use ceramic tiles on spacecraft because of the reentry. But it isn't the kind of ceramic that you think it is. Most of it is a totally different type of material, but it is a ceramic tile. And yeah, you can take a ceramic plate and set it on a fire. It takes forever before heat starts to go through that. Scar, I'll assure you of one thing, brother. They're not going to be a quality metal. None of those mainstream black fuses that you see out there are going to be quality metal. None of them. It don't matter what name brand's on them. They're all buying these fuses from the same place. They say, "Hey, I'll order, 100,000 of these fuses with this printed on them." They go, "Okay, bam," and then they get them in crates and they sell them. That's how that works. Some companies do very boutique stuff, like Glow Voltage, for example. They are manufacturing a very specific type of fuse. And it's 100% obvious that it's not something that your run-of-the-mill fuse factory makes. They have it manufactured probably in China, but that doesn't make it bad. Their design is built like a tank, if you ask me. If and I don't like, I don't like pushing a brand, but those glow voltage fuses, they look really good. If I'm going to stick with A&L, and that's probably what I'm going to do is order a batch of those because they're absolutely well-made fuses, at least right now. Don't forget there are marine-rated fuses out there also, yes. Completely sealed with specialty fuse holders designed, boats, engine compartments. Yes. And that's what I was talking about. So one of the things that you have, if you want a true marine rated or a true non-spark fuse, the element that breaks apart is actually encased in sand. So there'll be like a round chunk in the middle, and then the fuse element goes through that, and that round thing is full of sand. So when the fuse blows, it's completely and totally contained inside that round chunk. They are not cheap. Uh, but yeah, you'll know what I'm talking about. You see them, two little blades coming out of a little round thimble looking thing. That's a fuse. And they get up to like 6,000 amps. Uh, and that thing weighs like 40 pounds. But that style of fuse is 100% protected from elements, and it keeps everything inside the fuse. Blue Sea. I haven't. I know of Blue Sea, and Blue Sea does make some quality stuff. I haven't compared. I haven't dug into their specific fuses to see what I think about them. But just go into shopping for equipment by the specs, not by the name brand, and don't let the name brand sway you. Um, that's a problem with the whole entire market right now. Is people putting their faith in a name brand, and that's what companies want you to do. And just because the company sells a whole bunch of really awesome products, that doesn't mean that if they put their name on this product, it's also awesome. You know, buy the product, not the name. That's what I'm trying to get you guys to all think that way. Look at what you're buying, not the company that puts their name on it, or even the company that manufactures it. Look at the product. And yes, I'm halfway on Team No Fuse. Halfway. I'm kind of on both sides. I fuse my runs from the front to the back on both ends. But the power that comes from my batteries into my amplifiers, there's no fuses in there. Those runs are as safe as they can be. They're all firmly attached and firmly secured down, and there's no need for a fuse in that run. That's just my opinion. But the fuse, the ones that run from the front of the vehicle to the back, I have fuses on both ends of that run. SLA can handle 0.4 volts, extra 0.4 volts. I'm not sure what we're talking about. I have we're talking about the hydraulic. Bolted to the table before I used it on the ground. It held the lug. I just pumped with one hand and held the wire with the other. Yeah, the new crimper's a game changer, dude. Look into it. It's a game changer. Oh yes, it does. It absolutely does. You know, you may not. Um, yeah, it matters. Voltage matters a lot. Well, why do you think people go from 14 volts to 16 volts? It's only 2 volts. But whenever you start doing the math, you find out it helps. It's a tremendous difference. Even the difference between 12.5 and 12.7, for example, is a big difference. So the mathematical formula to figure out your watts is to multiply your voltage times your amperage. And you can do this math triangle in any way you want. However many watts you're getting out, you say, well, okay, I'm doing this much wattage out. I'm using this much voltage. You can figure out your amperage. Whichever, you only have to know two and you can find the third one, okay? But the key thing is let's use the easy numbers so that my math is, I don't do stupid shit with math. Let's say you're producing 10 volts and 100 amps. That's 1,000 watts, okay? Now, if you go to 11 volts and 100 amps, now that 1,000 watts becomes 1,100 watts. So you've added 100 watts by adding 1 volt in that scenario. So yes, voltage is a big difference. It's a big deal. Supercaps and lithium. Yes. I'm running what I would say lithium and supercaps. I'm running 500 farad of supercaps on my 2 trunk thunder lithium 200 amp hour bank. Honestly, I haven't noticed a difference after adding the supercaps, but I had them, and so I put them in. Didn't really need them, But if you got them, you might as well use them, right? Vanny said 300 amp hour isn't cheap. Depends. Safe, reliable, consistent, dependable. 300 amp hours is not cheap. You can get 300 amp hours, but you're likely to lose all that stuff I just listed before if you get it cheap. The B2 DSP, I just forgot to get the RCA for the output. Now the wait begins. Yeah, oh, I love it, dude. It's right up there. It's going to come down, though, in the near future. All of my audio stuff on the walls will come down because I'm going to do a different audio setup in here, uh, just for the flexibility of what I do with my day-to-day life. But I've been running my audio through that setup, that 4-channel, and that DSP forever. I'm going to end up moving the 4-channel and probably the DSP as well to a stunt wall in my Tahoe. I'm going to run the whole stunt wall off that one 4-channel with that DSP. And it'll be separate from the rest of my system in every way except it'll be pulling its power from the same place. I'll be able to Bluetooth to it specifically, control it separate. But I'm also going to have an input running from the other DSP to this DSP. So if I want to, I can play it all at one time. I'll have the option of Bluetoothing straight to this DSP and playing just it. Or I can switch over to the input channels and run a signal from my other DSP to this DSP. And then I can play all the outputs the same. Yeah, because that's how I roll. Isaacs, thank you. I'll look into that lithium battery. Yes. The Big Jeff battery, it's a good battery. Like $300. It's going to do way more for you than putting another AGM in there. So do I connect the charging wires from the alternator to that lithium, or do I go from the stock battery to the lithium? Either one. It doesn't matter. You're going to get pretty much the same results either way. Always the best way is to go from the alternator to your rear bank, a straight run, but the difference is negligible. If your wiring is inconvenient, if it's more convenient to go from the front battery to the back battery, do that. As long as you're running a big 3 from the alternator to that battery, so you're getting plenty of conductivity across that L. If you're not running a big 3 setup, and you still got stock grounds and all that stuff, just run straight from the alternator bracket for your ground, and from the alternators, the big power output for your positive, and run those 2 wires straight back to your lithium battery. And you can eliminate having to do a big 3 at all because you're going to be pulling it right into the battery. Hopefully that answered your question. The glow fuses have 2 rivets on each side. Yes. And that's something I talked about earlier in there is I think ultimately, let me get my little piece here again. I think this is a shitty design. I think this is a company trying to save money, but all of them are like this. So they put those rivets through the middle, and just look what it does to the middle of this structure, the way it's made. If you're an engineer designing a fuse, this is a cost measure. Clamping it here. Clamping a rivet on each side allows this whole piece to be solid in the center that goes out to that bridge. I think it's a better design, but it's going to cost more. The one thing is like this, you can either way it turns, the rivet can go in from either side and be the same. It's symmetric in the center. So they stamp these things out, and then they run through a little machine that clamps on the piece, That whole design works better if your fuse can go through the machine in either direction and get the same treatment. Of course, the 4-sided one will do the same thing, but I think it was designed to a cost, not to, the best possible design. And that's why, I'm leaning towards that glow voltage thing for A&L fuses. I really am. But not because of the name, but because I think it's a really good fuse. Adrian says delete the AGM. You can, but you don't have to. In fact, with the single um, with a single Big Jeff battery, I wouldn't delete the AGM because it struggles a little bit with the amperage to start a large vehicle by itself. It will do it, but it's not a really smooth, quick process. So I would keep the AGM and just run that separate battery. It will run happily alongside a stock battery, though, especially if it's something that you drive on a regular basis. It will run very easily on side, and then you'll have the reserve cranking power of that front battery to start the vehicle, and the nice solid battery to support your audio system. They will work together. Ceramic is on spark plugs. Sure. High heat, high electrical, high heat. Yeah, you got to protect that shit. I've been using ceramic on insulators since. Oh my God! You guys ever been in a house that had the like a 80 or 90-year-old house that still had its original wiring? You know how they run the electrical system in those houses? They didn't have insulated Romex like we have today. They ran two. They ran two wires through the attic. It looked like if you've seen an electric fence, it looked like that. Like imagine an electric fence wire, and they used little ceramic things that looked like a thimble with thread on it. They looked like those, and they would run the wire through the attic side by side and connect it on the ends with those little ceramic deals, and then it would go down the wall as two wires, separate wires, bare wires, go down the wall, and when it got to where the plug was, it would turn and go to the plug, or it would go through the ceiling, and then it would come into the light, and then they would have a little fabric covered wires to run off of that to do lights. All the walls, all the wiring running through the walls was two bare wires, and it was connected to ceramic insulators on either end. That's how they used to do the wiring in houses. And the funny thing is, as crazy as that sounds, it's even crazier to see it in person. But as crazy as that sounds, those houses that were wired that way or still wired that way still work. It was a solid way of doing things. Rats didn't eat through the insulation and chew up that Romex wire like they do. And, fire wouldn't burn those wires. They just stayed separated, and they did their job for 100 years. It was a great system. It's all bare wire. So, yeah, if you climb up in the attic, you would very easily get shocked real good by touching one of those wires running across the attic. Real stuff, man. Yeah, he has a lead acid under the hood. He said he had a new lead acid. He didn't specify whether it was AGM or whether it was submerged lead acid, but either way, the combo of those two will work out fine. Let's see here. Banny said I'm using that single A&L voltage meter holder under the hood with battery. Watch out for those holders that have the voltage meters on them. Not that it's a bad thing, but most of the ones that I've seen that have the meter on them, and it's a fuse holder with a meter on it, most of the ones I've seen that had that configuration were not the best quality. They had a bad, crappy plating on the metal, and they can degrade and do this. All right. See, let me show you guys up close. I want to see you up close. This is the less destroyed side. See that plating on there? You see that? That plating, I'll give you a better shot. It's hard for me to get the lighting right and everything. That plating, all right, see how it's blistered up right there? Okay, well, on this other end, here's the worse end. See, it's blistered up, but it's also popped completely off. And when that plating pops off, that means that the material that is in between this head of this bolt and that block goes away, which means the connection gets loose. And the same thing happens in here where the wire goes in to this, that plating inside there pops off, and then this connection with this crappy CCA wire, which is all green and fuzzy, that connection gets loose. And then you end up holding something like this and going, why didn't the fuse blow? Because the fuse don't blow from heat. It blows from overcurrent. That's a heat problem. So you don't want to end up with one of those things. I've had that thing for several years now. I was up at my buddy's shop and one day, and the guy come in and he's like, man, I need a new fuse holder. And I went out there and helped him, even though I was just hanging out with my buddy's shop. I went out there and helped him. And I was like, yeah, we got some stuff in here. I fixed him up with a new fuse holder and everything in his car. And I said, do you mind if I keep this one? I want to use it for YouTube. And so I've had it ever since. And it's a great illustration of what happens whenever you have bad connections. A whole lot of things happen badly, but all of them are important. They make metal fuse holders because the plastic ones keep backing the set screw out. You don't really want a metal fuse holder. If you're having some kind of issues in that regard, go down to Dollar General and get yourself a cutting board, one of those PPO or polypropylene polypropylene plastic cutting boards, and just drill holes and recess the bolts and make your own. That's a solid way to make one. I've considered doing it, and I may end up doing it in the future, but that's a really good way to make your own fuse holder. You don't want a metal fuse holder though. That's why there's a reason why that doesn't exist, is because you don't want metal anywhere near your open metal. That's bad. You can see where there's a problem there. You need something that's non-conductive. You want to wrap the whole fusing situation in total non-conductivity. In case chaos happens, then things don't short out. Even as bad as this thing was, okay, as bad as this went, when he handed it to me, this was still snapped together like this. This is how it came, and he had a zip tie on this. So even as bad as this got, this wire was still contained inside this plastic. This wire was still contained inside this plastic. There was a hole up here where it melted through, but the back of this is still non-conductive. All of this is still non-conductive. This was still safe. And that's how if a fuse holder is going to fail completely, this is how the whole thing needs to fail. It needs to fail in safe mode. So yeah, he was inches away from burning down his car, but it did not completely fail. And that just shows you the difference in the types of plastics, and plastics can be great. This really isn't a dig on this design. I'm not digging on the design. I'm digging on the metal they used for these bars, and also the fact that this CCA wire was used. That combination was horrible for that environment. What brand welding wire do I recommend? I like the Flex Whip, and I like the Temco. Those are my favorites. A lot of guys like Windy Nation. Windy Nation's fine. My favorite, though, is the Flex Whip because it's really flexible. It still gives you that extremely high heat resistance in the jacket, but the jacket is also like spaghetti. It's as soft as car audio wire, and it's as tough as welding wire. It's a really good wire. FLEXWHIP. I think the only color it comes in is orange. The last time I looked, that's all I could find was orange. Zip ties are good. Kicker has some marine fuses and holders. Okay, let me go check out Kicker real quick. Bear with me a minute, and we'll be there. We'll get her there. I just got to figure out the That's not the right thing. Okay, let's go here. Now let's go here. Uh, uh, Premium marine speakers, amplifiers, accessories, maybe. Okay, that looks very familiar. Um, that little fuse. Yeah, those fuses. Yeah, I've seen those. Oh, we'll get to that. I'll pull it up here in a second. I'm just kind of looking through here. Um, Fuses. What else do we have? We have just those. 300 amp bus. Okay. So let's look at this real quick. Let me see what will get me back there. There we go. This is a marine fuse. Now I haven't used these before, but I think the way they work is your source or they conduct from one to the top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top. And it says it's rated at 300 amps. That's pretty good fuse. So yeah, your one power will either go in or come out here, and either go in and come out on that bottom conductor, and it would pass through this whole block. For the size, I saw another variant of that in an image. Yeah, right here. This is that same style of deal. So it would look something like this. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but I've seen those before, and yeah, sure. Uh, I like. I think that having the whole fuse contained like that could help with conduct for corrosion and things of that nature. So, and the price on those, what were they? Go back. So $24.99 for one. That's $25 a piece. That's for 100 amp. Let's go down here and pick the highest amperage one and see if it changes, and it does not. So yeah, you're looking at $25 a piece. Those are some really expensive fuses. Um, but sure, I'm down with the thickness. My only problem ever with Kicker is, man, a lot of their stuff is really expensive, and they're one of the few companies, Kicker and Sundown, I'll say, are really the two that are honest to God developing new tech and building new stuff and making advancements in car audio and like pushing and pushing and pushing. They're actively building and developing new stuff, and they literally have the right to charge a lot for their stuff because they're putting tons of R&D into it, and they're making new stuff all the time. That said, I can't afford to live on a Kicker life, man. I can't afford to live that life. They have the right to charge it, and I think it's worth the money. I just can't afford to pay it. Um, let's see here. Flex Whip. Yeah, Flex Whip solid, dude. Wait, I mean, I got a lot. I've used it quite a bit. I've got some in there, but um, I mean, uh, let's see here. We're gonna. Not sure where I'm gonna go. It's everywhere. Let's just click on one of these. Okay, yeah, this will work. This will work. Let's look over here. Let's talk about it. Let's look at it. So you can get it a whole lot smaller than this, but this is your flexor, and that's truth right there. You see how they got that tied in a knot right there? That's what I'm talking about, and it literally does that. This stuff is really cool. So yeah, I mean, and the price is going to be right on point with pretty much everything else. We can do some math. Let me find I found that you need to go with a 2 alt of anything welding to get the same as a 1 alt car audio wire. So If we're looking at 50 feet of 2-alt flex whip, all right, which would be the same as a 1-alt, 50 feet at $300. Um, Anybody want to give me the breakdown on that? Uh, my brain isn't going to be able to do it. Sometimes I can, sometimes I get stuck. We'll bust out the cheer box. What's 305 divided by 50?
305 divided by 50 is 6.1.
So that's $6 a foot. And I think 5 a foot's about what everything else is running, so it's a little bit more expensive. Do they have? They don't have a review that I'm looking for, but yeah, you can't go wrong with that stuff, man. It's solid. Let's see here. So American Bass Nerd said I'm going to be hooking up 900 amps between 2 amplifiers. I'm brainstorming how to run wires and what isolator to use. Isolators. Isolators. Why are you using isolators? So you're going to be doing 2 amps and 900 amps going to the 2 amp rack. Yeah, I don't know. I need to talk a whole lot more before I can give you advice on that. I'm not sure why you're using isolators. I mean, they're a tool, but you don't always. I mean, honestly, the one of the last things you want to have to use is an isolator. You kind of have got cornered into a point to where you need an isolator. You want to design around not using an isolator if at all possible. Some are heated too, yeah. So Stu says I have a theory that caps may actually be great for fast transients. Absolutely. But your standard issue cap, like you buy off Amazon, 1 farad, 5 farad, 15 farad, 20 farad, all that stuff, it's not going to help in for what you're wanting to get. Most people buy those thinking they're going to help with dimming headlights and stuff like that. They're not going to do anything for that. They're going to probably have a voltmeter on them and kind of look interesting back there, but that's the extent of what they do. We're talking about caps. We're talking about super caps and ultra caps. 300, 500, 2,000 farads of capacity, of capacitance. Got to be specific on that. But yes, they will. And a regular cap in the right circumstances can help with transients, but not really bass transients, more mid transients. Is it going to help a little bit? Yeah, but it's not going to stop your headlights from dimming or anything like that. More for an SQ setup, yes. But yeah, you're right, Steve. I agree with you. You have your 8K setup set separately, correct? You can't connect 2 of those. No, they don't have a bridging ability. So I'm running 2 of them, and I have them gain matched. And we ain't having no troubles. I mean, we're just knocking people's hats off. That's all we're doing. What do you think about caps on huge Class AB amps? Stu. Same, in my opinion, it's the same thing. If you're using super caps, yeah, it's going to help, but you have to replace the battery with super caps takes a lot of super caps. So batteries are good. The best system is a hybrid of battery and super cap together. That's where your best overall performance is going to happen. Bobby said, I'm running a big 5. Uncle Bobby B, baby. Uncle Bobby B. Stu said, as long as there's enough electrical to support the current, not just running them on the caps, I'd say it should help with fast transients. 100%. Temco is another one. Yes, Temco is a solid welding wire. I like it. In fact, I like the company. I found that Temco makes great tools. If you guys are looking for weird ass tools or just tough tools, check out what Temco has to offer. You might find what you're looking for, and they give a good warranty on everything. I like the company. I should start working with them. We got ducks. We got tacos.
Crushing on these tacos, we buy the fiesta. Guac on the side, man, you know it's the best. Lettuce and salsa, stack it high, make it pop. Crunch in my mouth, can't stop, won't drop. Sliver scissor in, flavor's cold is so sweet. After one taco, I'm in for a repeat. Bite after bite, got me dancing in my seat. Hitting up the taqueria, can't face defeat. Taco love in every single bite. Feeling good, every feast all night.
All right. Hang on just one second. Troy said Temco is one of the welding wire breaking. I ordered 2 alt gauge for another run from my alternator front to back. What's up, Troy? It's good stuff. Smokey says, respectfully, I think the 5S 20P of 2.9 skibs is going to outshine your electrical just running the numbers, especially since you're running 2 alternators. I'm actually only running 1 alternator 99% of the time on my electrical. So I'm charging at normally 370 amps if I am on the pedal. If not, it's closer to maybe 300 amps or so, maybe 250 to 300 if I'm at idle or close to idle. I'm charging at 14.8. My bank rested around 13.3, 13.4. And whenever I'm at full tilt boogie, I never drop below 13. So that's where my system runs at. It does a fine job. And I say full tilt boogie, I mean we are letting it rip as hard as it'll go. I go all the way whenever I demo, and I demo all day long. But yeah, you're probably right. I'd have to do the math myself, but you may be right. Appreciate the fiber, man. My wife loves tacos. Red Pill said Flex Whip got you. Yeah, and the other one was Temco. Temco and Flex Whip. Those are my 2 that I like to push because I know the quality is always there. And I like Flex Whip's jacket. So Temco, if you don't need to make any hard runs, hard corners and stuff, if you're just doing big, long, straight runs and you got plenty of room to turn the corners and stuff. But if you're wanting to dress and you're wanting to really make some nice, pretty curves and corners and things like that, Flex Whip is the one I would choose for that because it does that so well. Knob and tube. I'm trying to figure that one out. I have no idea. Yes, knob and tube. You can't have a knob without a tube, baby. You need both. They work together. 1200 watts AB was pulling too much on subs for the cap. Exactly. Yeah, a cap dissipates in like a thousandth of a second. It's almost instantaneous. But that thousandth of a second is perfect for that initial little tiny little bump of that first of that wave, that sound wave. That very first little whoop, the first time that subwoofer moves out, it may be just enough extra to make it a little snappier and a little crisper. But it's if you've got hundreds of amp hours or hundreds of farads rather of caps, it'll play a lot longer than that. I can hold over 13 volts on just that 500 farad bank for probably 6 or 8 seconds, before I start dropping into the 12s, deep into the 12s. It's pretty substantial. Um, but still, that's seconds. That's a few seconds, that's single digits. Takes a lot of caps to outdo a battery, yes. Caps shine where energy needs to discharge and recharge very quickly. Absolutely. That's why the best way to run caps is as a hybrid with some other kind of storage. They work well as a hybrid. Still pretty good. Not sure what we're referring to. When we remodeled my dad's house, we found one of those ceramic things you're talking about. Yeah, they'll be all through the attic, down the walls. They didn't have any insulation because the insulation wasn't the thing. And if they did, they would leave the channel where the wires ran for that between those two studs uninsulated, and the wires would go straight down the wall, down there where the plug was, and then they would go straight over to the plug-ins, the plug-in stuff. And like I said, it looks dangerous and crazy and insane, but it's lasted 100 years. I mean, and mice don't mess with it. There's nothing there to eat. There's nothing there to rot. It's just a nail, a ceramic insulator, and a piece of freaking wire. That's it. Yep, it definitely is CCA. Let's see here. I got a question. Okay. Rich says, I got a question. I have 8K Slapz, and I noticed I seen it cut on and off sometimes. Incorrect. I'm sitting at 14.8, 14.6 at full tilt. Voltage probably spiking below. So, like, depending on what kind of voltmeter you have, your voltmeter probably isn't responding as quickly as you think it is. So you may be seeing it set at 14 and a half or whatever, but it could very well be dipping and coming back up on the hard bass notes. And they absolutely do not like to be undervolted. So when you drop down below, like, when you get down below like 12 volts, much below 12 volts, they will shut off. And that's just a protection circuit kicking in. The only other reason that you'll make that happen is if you manage to overheat them. And I won't tell you, sir, I would be amazed to see how you managed to do that because of the punishment I put mine through. But mine are not mounted up under a seat somewhere, hidden behind panels or up against carpet. They're on a fairly hard surface with good air circulation around them. So I'm kind of best case scenario as far as the mounting location, but I'm worst case scenario as far as the implementation. Because I run those things, I run them full clip, protect. They have the protection lights on. I'll have all the lights on during demos. I mean, I just absolutely beat the total ape shit out of them. They get no love. I took a hammer to them every single time I get in that Tahoe. And I do that because I want to see if I can make them fail. I want to see what makes them fail. So far, they just don't fail. But they will shut off for low voltage. I've never had one cut off from heating, and I've been out in the parking lot in 110 degree temperatures doing demos for 8-9 hours back to back, just demo after demo after demo, going full tilt, going into clip each time. So I mean, I don't know. It's probably I'm gonna say it has to do with power. That's going to be your most likely reason. Let's see here. It also could be a connection that's breaking whenever you're hitting. It could be a ground that's loose and that's disconnecting and reconnecting, or a power wire that's disconnecting and reconnecting. That's what I would look into, all those things. Should I have all the batteries? Had the batteries, all the goods. My other amp doesn't do it. It just wasn't big enough. Right. And And okay, so what may have happened whenever you had your other amp hooked up? Uh, there's a couple of reasons why. One would be that in the process of changing from one amp to the other, the connection was the solid connection before was not solid after you got done. That's one possibility. Another one would be that the other amplifier doesn't mind dropping the lower voltage and still maintained, and also wasn't pulling on the system as hard. It wasn't requiring as much power, so it wasn't dipping voltage. I'd say there's a real good chance that you have either a loose connection or your voltage is dipping, and you're not seeing it because your meter's not fast enough to catch that. If you have a SPL meter, you can have that plugged into your car, and then you can do a sweep to see where the mini SPL meter, and it'll literally show you your lowest voltage during that sweep. It'll show you your highest output at what frequency it was, and then in a different window, it'll show you what your voltage was at that moment. And you'll be surprised how low your voltage is at that moment. So throwing that out there, they're like $100. I don't know. I don't remember. Ow. Huh. This thing right here, you got one of these. This is your friend for finding those voltage drops. This guy. You can pick. I took mine and I hot glued my plug in so it wouldn't fall out. You can pick these up over at Big Jeff Audio. And I knocked Jason off the wall. And use discount code CAE to save some money off of that. I'll put you back up for later, Jason. Don't you worry. You'll get your spot back. Oh, you're not late, man. I just jumped in on a random show, so it is what it is. I have to rewatch to make sure I didn't miss anything. There's a lot, so yeah, probably. Fuse holders make me think of starting a third print farm to make some cool designs. The main thing about a fuse holder is you need to make a good one. You need to be making it out of that fiber impregnated polyester plastic. And I think you can print that shit, but I don't know how expensive it is. You can print a variant, but it needs to be that fiber impregnated. It needs to have a melting temperature, very, very high melting temperature. So that's the key. The fact if you're printing it with a printer means you've got to be able to get the plastic hot enough to print it, which means it's probably not the best at handling heat. Just throwing that out there. They need to be able to handle heat really well. Non-ignition fuses, yes. They do not spark out. Yes, Frank, you're correct. Kicker seems expensive at first class, but I promise you're getting world class. Oh, I know. I'm not dumping on Kicker at all. It's the cost of doing business. Whenever you're constantly developing your own products and innovating and changing your equipment and changing your lineup, you're having to retool manufacturers. You're having to redesign circuit boards. You're having to build all this stuff new all the time. Those costs add up, and a company like Kicker has to pass those costs on to the customer. That's just how business works. So yeah, 100%, man. Absolutely, yeah, $5 a foot. So that's not terrible, but again, you're getting that basically unmeltable jacket, undestroyable jacket that's also very soft and flexible. It checks all the boxes. That's why I like the stuff. I've done tests, guys. You've seen my tests. If you haven't seen my tests, watch my videos. I have a bunch of videos on the how those jackets work and how tough those jackets are. Frank said lucky. Flex is a preen. Is there flex a preen? Is there a is up there for 2.0? Yes. Flex EB Flex welding wire is $3.99. Yeah. What's up, G Body? American Base Nerd. Okay, let's see here. Oh, before I read this one, nobody commented on Stu's question. Stu asked, everybody's opinion. Do you gauge your fuse by what the wire can handle or by what your power needs are? And I didn't see anybody answer that question, so I'm going to answer that question. You gauge your wire by what your power needs are, and then you gauge your fuse by what that wire can handle. So if you've got a 300 amp draw, it runs 15 feet, that's a good number. You can use alt gauge wire and then put a 300 amp fuse on it, or maybe a 350. That way you're fusing the wire, and the wire is big enough to carry the current. So if you didn't know, that's the answer to that question. American Base Nerd said isolator. Okay, for the primary battery doesn't drain the lithium in the trunk. Yeah. I figured that might be what you were doing. Also, the voltage is different between the primary, and it can hurt. Only if you're not driving it on a regular basis. If you're driving it daily, it's not going to pull it down to the point where it's a problem. But if you're primarily since you're primarily pulling your current off the battery, not off that isolator, as long as the isolator doesn't melt down on you, then you're Gucci. Just keep an eye on that isolator. You may end up having issues with it. Even the ones that are rated pretty high, sometimes they don't handle that continual load. So, but yeah, you don't really need it if you're driving it every day, but it doesn't really hurt used in exactly the right way. Sounds like you got a pretty good setup. So, let's see here. I got a question. Okay, we already did this. No, we didn't. I have 8K Slapz amp on some 18s, full tilt. Speakers barely even move. Couldn't that be the amp? Can handle these speakers? No, because I have done it. Because I done set it few X, or should I try? Okay. Well, there's a lot of unknown stuff here. Your subs will have a electrical and a mechanical X-Max. And once they hit the end of that X-Max, electrical usually first, they don't go any further than that. And if they do, you don't want them to because you're going to damage things. However, also there's the port tuning. If you're playing at your port tuning, your subwoofers are not going to move very much at all. Your port is going to be doing all the moving. I never have the right thing for this. I got something to work today. So let's do this. Imagine this hand is the subwoofer, and this is the port air. So it only takes the tiniest movement of my hand to make that thing swing. See, at one point it almost sat still. This is what's happening with your subwoofer. Your subwoofer, my hand, is barely moving, but as you can tell, that meter is swinging big and wide down there. And that is what's happening whenever you're playing at port tuning. Your subwoofer will have very, very, very little movement. When you try to play outside of port tuning, that's when you're going to see a lot more movement, but get less sound, which is mind-blowing, right? As far as what's going on, there could be all kinds of things that I don't know about. You could have your gain set wrong. You could have, there's just tons of things that could be happening. So I can't be there to make all those judgments. I'm just giving you some things to think about. The bigger question is not how much the sub is moving, but how loud is it? How hard is it hitting? Because that ultimately is what you're looking for. If you want your sub to move more, just play away from port tuning and you'll see lots of sub movements. I get it. It's a video thing. You want to see it go up and down and up and down. More power will probably do that, but at the possible cost of ejecting your cone off of your frame. So, or tearing your landing, or tearing your spider, or tearing your surround, or ripping your tensils out, blasting the dust cap off. I mean, all kinds of wonderful things happen. Lots of destruction. Plug it into a light socket. I know, I'm just messed up. You gotta love me or hate me, man. That's how that works. Laser said, dealing with ultracaps, how would you charge it? Use a small light bulb. You can use a test light. That works fine. It's pretty quick, actually. Put a test light on it. Just have a clamp on your test light, little clamps. Where'd they go? Oh, yeah. Some of these things right here. Put these on your test light. Just to create a load and let it charge. Or you can always do the insane base head thing and just stick the wire on it as fast as you can and be ready for the spark when it happens. Whichever you choose. But a light bulb is fine. Mine's full tilt. Remember, Rich. Full tilt, 14. Anyone to watch jump. What's going wrong? I have 2 alternators. Base and 370 for base, extra batteries. Okay. Knob and tube wiring in old ass homes. Oh yeah. Now I caught up what you were saying, Frank. Knob and tube. I don't know about knob and tube, but we definitely used ceramic, basically the same thing you see on an electric fence today, except they actually make them out of plastic today, I think, which is funny. But the ceramics last forever. A piece of ceramic is excellent, at insulation. It's the best. Still use them on high-line poles and all that stuff. All those little fittings are all ceramic when they're running out of power. That's what's worked for 100 plus years, so it'll continue to work. Absolutely, yes. You're 100% on. I agree with that 100%. They just don't have much bringing up the rear power. They come out swinging, but then they die quick. That's where the battery comes in, and alternator, depending on the situation. There's so many variables. Like I said, it's usually best to use a combination of caps and batteries because that's going to give you the best overall performance. Frank said, I need more batteries too. Yeah. Wiring cable amperage ratings. Okay. Governed by the installation and not by the wire itself. Let me reread this. See if I want to argue with you or not. Wiring cable amperage ratings are governed by the installation and not by the wire itself. There's marine grade 2 alt for $7 a foot. I don't agree with that 100%. Because if you take 2 wires, 2 cables, stretch them out however many feet, they're going to have different size cables. They're going to be able to conduct different amounts of electricity based on the amount of material you're passing that electricity through. So it's both the circumference of the cable, the actual cable, not the insulation, and the length of that cable is going to dictate how much current you can pass through it before it starts to rise thermally and get hot, which is what you don't want. A smaller cable is going to have a smaller number. Now, your installation will be part of that because you're doing different things along the way is going to change those numbers. But what we're mainly talking about is the length of cable that you're going to fuse from the first connection to the connection where it ends. Without a fuse, you're going to put a fuse in there to prevent it from melting down. And the way that works is, okay, so you've got say you got a 500, well, I'm going to keep talking, 300 amp fuse on, say, 10 foot of alt gauge wire. And and then that's fine. That fuse will carry the 300 amps. That wire will carry the 300 amps. Everything's happy. But then one day, somewhere between that fuse and that load, the uh, the wire rubs through and metal contacts it, so it grounds out. Now, that wire is conducting more than 300 amps, right? And whenever that happens, the fuse is rated at 300 amps, so it stops it. It cuts off and kills it so that it doesn't catch the vehicle on fire. That's the whole point in that, is to prevent that dead short that's happened from setting the vehicle on fire. Now, if you had a little tiny wire with, say, a 20 amp fuse on it, same thing. But if you put a 300 amp fuse on a little tiny wire that should be fused at 20 amps, whenever it shorts out, that 300 amp fuse is going to be big enough to let that wire just turn into a heating element, glow all red and nasty, and melt the insulation off and catch something on fire. That's why you have to fuse the wire relative to how much current that wire can handle before it starts to deconstruct itself. So yes. Let's see. I dip at 14.5 or 14.4 when the bass drops are. It's about 280 amps under the hood and 330 out. I'm not sure what we're referring to. G-Body said, I have a loose ground under the hood, making mine cut out. That'll do it for real. Welcome to the show, everybody. Those of you that don't normally show up, we do a show on Friday and Sunday normally. This week, we're doing a random show here or there, just kind of getting down, man. You guys are all chiming in. Yeah. Stu Mello says improper or loose fuse, maybe. Possible. Stu says he thinks that it's voltage dropping. I agree. That'd be my first guess. Let's see. Thanks. I'm taking in all the information. Love your channel. Appreciate you, Richie. Double check your connection. Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's see here. Stu said input clipping can cause issues with some amps, but generally it just ends up making a distorted output. Yeah, and yeah, man, I do. I mean, like, guys, I'm not telling you to do the shit that I do to your amplifier. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that you absolutely should not do the crap that I do to my amplifiers. But what I do is I take it to the level to where nobody else is going to be going there or going past it anyway. So when I say I can recommend something, it's because I have beat the shit out of it. And as long as you don't beat it any harder than I have, which would be very difficult to do, you're not going to run into a plot where it can't continue. They're really good amps. Those Slapz 8Ks are freaking crazy good amps. Could be a subwoofer. You know, that is a possibility. It could be. It absolutely could be. But especially since you're going from a less powerful amp to a bigger amp, so your sub is behaving in a way that it wouldn't behave on the smaller amp. Could be your leads slapping together. All kinds of weird stuff, man. Order your wiring kit. I don't know. I'm not sure. You're probably not talking to me, I don't think. Power lead. I gauge it by what the manufacturer says. Yeah, I don't. Again, look up a couple of different wiring charts on the net. They'll give you some ideas. But I typically, for me, I run a single alt gauge run for about every 300 amps that I'm going to run, period. And I typically fuse around 350 amps on that run. That's what I do. The reason is I do some very, very, very extended, long, hard, maximum power pulls on a constant basis. And on a 300 amp fuse, that will tend to cause serious degradation and meltdown. But so yeah, I run a little higher than that, but I recommend everyone run 300 amp fuse on each alt gauge wire you run, essentially, and then run enough alt gauge wires to handle 300, 300, 300 to get over the amount that you're actually pulling. That's how I do it. Speakers, 4,500 watts. Thanks for your approval, by the way, Stu. 4,500 watts RMS a pop, 9K max power. Okay. Also speaker or 4,500 watt RMS. Think they're just a little too much. Not really. I mean, the 8K on, if you're getting like 3.5 ohms of rise after you're going, the 8K is going to be producing around 5,000 to 5,500 watts in that general range at like 3.5, 3.3 ohms of resistance after impedance rise has hit everything. So you'd be putting about half the RMS power. I mean, me personally, if I was running two 4,500 watt RMS subs, I would be running two 8Ks. And this wired down to 1 ohm each, 1 ohm per sub. That's what I would be running on that. I typically recommend that you double, and not everybody does this. I recommend that you double the amount of power on your amplifier that you're going to actually push through your sub. And the reason is after rise, you typically are making about half that power on the amplifier that it normally makes. So that tends to line up pretty good. You still have to use your brain, though. If you're not capable of using your brain and your ear and your nose to monitor the things that you need to monitor to run at that level, then run RMS at the subwoofer's RMS, because you have the potential to blow shit up. It will handle it, though, if you're monitoring things and you're keeping track of all this stuff. I'm steadily hitting my subs with temp guns. I'm listening. I'm watching. I know what I'm doing. I push it stupid hard, but I also know what I'm doing. If you're not in that state, if you're not prepared for that, by no means do what I do. Run at the RMS power for your amplifier, and then you can kind of be stupid and not break stuff as often. Okay? That's the truth of the matter. Just because Dale Earnhardt used a bad, just because, Mr. NASCAR could drive his Ford Thunderbird down the highway at 140 reliably without hitting anything, it doesn't mean that you should drive the same Ford Thunderbird down the highway at 140. It's a different thing. And those things are just part of the culture that I've been in for a very long time. Let's see here. Frank gauges by earlobe size. Absolutely. Stu, you're messed up. Okay, good to know. Definitely not drive it every day. I definitely do not drive it every day. Okay. Yeah, having a relay shut it off is good if you're not driving it on a constant basis. Team no fuse. Yeah, we already went over this. Sorry. Hey, I covered it anyway. Some folks can fit 4 gauge though. Hell yeah. Run 4. Bigger is always better. It's just a matter of whether your pocketbook can handle it. That's the key. Adrian going for a light show with his demos. Hell yeah, man. Bigger lobe, the higher the power. Let's see here. It's not hitting as loud as one does on the 8K. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look a lot more into your bill before I could really talk on it. I've done my best to cover the generic stuff that I would check for. Oddly enough, Strand count matters too. You think higher strand count would handle more current, but it's actually the opposite. And you're correct. Um, the optimum piece of material to conduct the highest amount of current will be a solid piece of copper. I mean, that's just how that is. A solid chunk of copper is going to conduct more than two pieces of copper. And two pieces of copper is going to conduct more than cutting it into four pieces. You're always going to get more current capability with less strands, as long as the mass is the same. So ideally, a copper rod as thick as an alt gauge would be the perfect conductor for current. The reason it's stranded is to make it possible to move it around and work with it. Let's see what else we got going on here. Different tables. Yes, they do. And you're correct. But you can get a general idea. That's why I said look at 2 or 3 different graphs, because you'll see a consistency between them and you get a general idea. And I gave you the basically, it's real simple. 300 amps for alt gauge, front to back run like 15 feet or more, or 15 feet or so, 300 amps. 4 gauge, you can run probably, I'd say probably 100 amps would be a safe number to say from front to back on a 4 gauge. But there you go. And that's, of course, all OFC copper, no, not copper clad aluminum. Copper clad aluminum should be used to fill up the trash can behind the building and for nothing else. All right, have a good time there. Get the beds and the kids to combine together to create a kid bed or a bed kid. Baseball, bed kid, I don't know. It is what it is, Stu. I don't think so, but I can tell you what you can expect to make out of a Slapz amp. The Slapz 8K at 1 ohm on a static load, you're going to get right at 8,000 watts. Right at 8,000 watts, provided you have the power to support it, you're going to get right at 8,000 watts. Where they shine, though, is when the impedance goes up from impedance rise. Slapz actually does better, is more efficient after that. So you get more than half the power. So like if you cut that sucker back to a 2 ohm load instead, you're going to make way more than half the power, which is normally what you would expect is to cut the power in half at 2 ohms, right? That thing makes more than half of its power in the 3.5, 3.6. It's still making more than half its power in the mid threes on ohm load, which is extremely good. That's where the Slapz amps tend to shine, is they don't suffer nearly as bad from impedance rise. And so you're going to see more consistent power across the board. I really enjoy that about them. And I know this because I had the meter on my amps. And so I was watching the different power outputs of different things and running drops and stuff and seeing where peaks happen and all this shit. I tested it essentially with actual subwoofers. I got that dyno result in my head. I saw it bust 8,000 watts, but it was as soon as it almost started coming up, it dropped back down. So I know it'll hit 8,000, but not a whole lot above that. It's going to run right about 8,000 on a static 1 ohm load. And realistically, if you're wired to 1 ohm, you're realistically going to be making between 5,000 and 6,000 watts, depending on how much rise you're having. But it's going to be a realistic number there. If I ran an 8K, it would be at 2 ohms. So you'd be making about 6,000 to between, you would realistically make between 4 to 6,000 in that range, depending on what your impedance rise was happening at that time. But they're more efficient at the higher ohm loads, so That's the other thing. It wouldn't tax your electrical as hard as running a amp that was rated at that power at full tilt. So, yeah, you're still going to see some good numbers out of that. You'll still be impressed. Let's see here. Planning my Tahoe bill with probably 2,000 watts total. Yeah, that shit'll change. There's never enough. No, they do not bridge. I am gain matched, running them separate. I appreciate you, man. I'm always learning. I try to do the best I can to give you my most up to date information, but understand that, like you guys, I'm always learning new stuff. So I'm totally willing to accept when I'm wrong, and I'm totally willing to correct myself whenever that happens. But as far as I know, the information that I give you each day is as up to date in my head as I can make it. That's all I can promise. The main thing I don't want to pass on information specifically. What I want to pass on to you people is the ability to gather information, the ability to understand what you're looking at and make a decision based on that, not on the name of a product or what somebody else says, but by what you see. You know, what's here, the real deal. How can I glean information from that and make an educated decision? That's what I'm trying to teach people. That's why I explain the reason for all of my answers if possible. Tahoe, probably do a single 18 IB. Well, that'd be fun. Seal 10 in the center console. That's a magic, dude. Once you do that, you never want to go back to that, to not having that. That's the magic. Stuff it as far under the dash as you can get it. Want to do a front subwoofer bad now? Oh, dude, yeah. I'm all about front sub action. Even in my crazy build, where I got 415s and a wall right behind my head, I'm still running a front sub because it helps give me those lows in the front. And whenever I'm not going nuts, I'm listening to music. You know, I like it to sound good. Can you control? No. Can you control two shock 8Ks with only one of the knobs that come with? I wish. Oh, I wish, because I love those knobs. They have really, really good bass knobs, and they have zero noise. They're very clean. They have a good gain slope. I love them. I wish I could, but no, you cannot. Unfortunately, no. And I'm going to be, I have been for quite a while, assembling a wealth of knowledge about bass knobs. And I'm going to get into that. That's coming in the future. Right now, I'm trying to find the perfect solution for bass knobs. And I'm still gathering information. So we'll get back on that. But I will say this. So far, the best bass knob has been a knob that controls a DSP subwoofer level, because of the way that whole system works. You get zero noise and zero bullshit. If I can find another setup like that that's independent of a DSP, or a DSP that has a bass knob that's literally a physical knob built into it, that's not extremely expensive, because most of those are, that's the stuff I'm looking for. So I'm working on that. You're damn right. And if you use discount code CAE, you can knock some more money off of that price. Grab the 3K for 144 ship. Yes, sir. Time to do some treatment around them doors, Sue says. A phone cord splitter, do not do that. That's a bad idea. Don't do that. And let me go back to this. I asked the owner of Slapz about this very thing. And he said, do not do that. That was his words. Do not do that. And I said, okay, I will not do that. Um, if you had a crystal ball, I do have crystal balls. Do you think since I was out of the market for a few years till I burn some coils that prices will only increase or switch to a Neo will happen? Oh my God. I'm going to have to try to decipher what the hell you just asked. Uh, do you think since I was out of the market for a few years till I burn some coils that prices will only I can't understand your language. It's got me hooked, man. Sorry. I normally tease people about this, but this time I know you tried you tried hard to make a sentence, and I feel sorry for you. Uh, so um, neos are neos are kind of niche. They're effective, but they're expensive. And then if the price of neo magnets actually goes down, then they'll become more mainstream on subwoofers. The honestly though, the well, this is straight up a Jacob Fuller question, but I'm not going to message him at 11 o'clock. I would ask him, but I can pretty much tell you the engineering reasons for using neos. One of them is weight. Uh, that's a big reason, and it's also a big reason is shipping. Shipping weight is actually a big deal with subwoofers. Slapz, my buddy Alan tells me that it costs about $100 to ship a subwoofer across the United States. That's a single subwoofer, like a 15, $100 to ship it. So, yeah, that's a lot of cost. And he does free shipping. So, that's one. And think about this. Not only do you have to ship it across the United States, but somebody has to ship it from one country to the other. Because we don't build them things here in the United States. They come from overseas. And that weight is what you're paying for to ship, the weight and the bulk. Now, having said that, there is one more advantage too. You can get more of the magnetic force in the spot you want it rather than having to build it around and try to get it to pull through a slug. You can put the magnets right where you want them because you have more concentration of magnetic energy. But the reason why those aren't mainstream right now is simply because they're just too expensive to make. That price may go down though over time. Let's see here. In part door card. Sound deadener, yes. My half bridge doesn't have the jack for linking. Yeah, I can't speak on that one, man. There's more than that. It has there's a few things that have to be done inside of a half bridge to link them, but you can't just link them. An amp repair shop may be able to do that for you, though. I don't know. Because there's not a big change, just small changes, but there are definitely things that have to be done. I just find it hard finding decent price subs without really spending a bit just on the woofer. What? You don't know about Slapz? Let's see. Hold on. All right, where we go? That's not it. That's the wrong thing. Where are you going, Gary? You dumbass. Is that here? Click. All right. Slapz. I don't know what size subs you're looking for, but let's go down here to the big ones. The big ones. The big ones. Like that's one of the big ones. The Slapz Audio SmackDown version 212, 3,000 watt RMS for less than $500. Um, but if we step back to the Oblivions, 12s, V2s are less than $300. The 15s that I'm currently running are less than $300, and they handle 2,000 watts. I've got one 8K on two of these, so I got two 8Ks on four of these 15s, and yeah, we're doing things, we're destroying things, breaking mirrors and all kinds of crap. Uh, and if you don't want to go crazy big, you just want to go small, man. Look down here. You can get the D2, the 10-inch with 1,500 watts RMS for less than $200. Real subwoofers. And the amplifiers, same thing. Pick up the Big Shock 8K for $349. Most of you guys could get by no problem with the 5K or the 3K, and you're looking at, less than $250 for either one of those two. I personally love this little amplifier right here, and that's the little mini 160.4 mini for just over $100. Discount code CAE saves you 10% off of all that stuff. So on top of that already ridiculously good price, yeah. You're having a hard time finding subs that aren't expensive? Well, you're at the right place. Let's see here. We're going to skip down through here and find the next question. I'm going to cut a hole in my car. Oh, we're talking about the infinite baffle. Oh, man. Yeah, do it. Don't be scared. Stu said a C4 AC4 knob that comes with the new Epic Micros is damn handy to control multiple sub amps. Dual knob with effect on one section, sub knob on the other. Plus, it's an epicenter, so there's that. Send me a link to that, Stu. I want to check it out. I'll dig into that. Sounds cool. Ferrite, yeah. I you know what I'm talking about. Or no, that's not what I'm talking about. You guys know what I'm talking about, the magnets. I may have said the wrong words, but y'all know. Jeez. EVs are driving up the prices. Yeah, maybe. It's hard to say. It's hard to say, really. EVs are definitely bringing the prices down on lithium. Man, hell, they made it possible. We didn't even really have lithium before EVs. EVs are where all the innovation's coming from. Do you think there's any company out there that's going to spend billions and billions of dollars to design really wicked cool batteries that we use in car audio? If they were just designing them for the car audio guys, no. It's going into that humongous, massive market of EVs and combination EV gas engines, hybrids, whatever you call them. That's where all that money's coming from. So, yeah, that market is absolutely making it possible for all this car audio base heads to have ridiculously powerful batteries that fit in small spaces and don't cost a fortune. Yeah, that's the thing. What's up, man? I don't know how to pronounce your name, but aloha to you too as well. Aloha to you too as well. Con. No, I just can't say that word, dude. My mouth does not work that way. Pastime playlist. Okay, I can do that one. If I'm running a single device, I fuse to the device. If I'm running on battery banks or multiple devices, I fuse to the wire with fuses in the rear. Okay. Let me reread this now. Make sure I got it right. If I'm running a single device, I fuse to the device. Multiple devices I fuse to the wire. I'm not going to correct you because I don't know for sure that you need correcting. I'm not entirely sure what the picture is that you're painting for my brain. I can't quite draw that image up. But the basic rule is put your fuse as close to the source of power as you can. And if you have a source of power on both ends of that wire, put a fuse on both ends of that wire. As far as fusing the device, you can put a fuse right before the device. I don't. I don't see any need to. Some people claim that it's a good thing. I just don't do it. But you absolutely do need to fuse every single wire at the beginning of the run coming from the power side, wherever the power is. And if you go to a distribution block where you shrink your wire sizes, like you run an alt gauge to the back and then jump down to like 4 gauges, for example, each of those 4 gauges also needs to be fused right at that block because they have the potential. They're not protected. They won't be protected by the fuse that you've got on that alt gauge. That 4 gauge can't handle that 300 amps, but that alt gauge can. So you got to fuse that 4 gauge wire as soon as it leaves that block or at that block. Beyond that, if that lines up with what you do, I'm not sure. I don't know anything about itty bitty boom batteries. I've heard that term. I guess I should look it up. Hold on. Let's see if we can look it up and I'll get a quick run over on them. And we did not get batteries. I'm so glad I don't have this on. Okay, hold on. I did not type boom either. I typed something else. I keep typing it. I know what my mind said. Well, come on now. Use your fingers. Jeez, you freaking old idiot. Okay, hold on. Okay. I gotta watch, man. Make sure I'm not going somewhere where I shouldn't be going because that would have been bad. I don't need that. Why? Oh, stop with your stupid pop-ups. Okay, hang on. I'm trying to find where we need to be here. Uh, I don't see a battery. I see a whole lot of other people's stuff. Amplifiers, wires, speakers, batteries. Okay, maybe it's in here. I'll hang on a minute. I'll pull you guys in and we'll talk about what we see. How about that? I got the miss search off of there, so we're good. We're good to go there. So this is at Crystal Audio Solutions. I don't think this is where we need to be. I think I went to the wrong place. It's limitless, 12 amp hour, motorcycle batteries and stuff. So yeah, I went to the wrong place. I'm gonna have to do another search. Definitely gonna pull my screen down for it. I don't want you guys to. I can't be putting stuff out there that's what I pulled up. That was bad. Yeah, that was terrifying. Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Okay, I think we are. Yes. Okay, we'll do this now. We're good. All right. So here's itty bitty boom. My old man face wants to say different words. Um, I ain't gonna dump on that. Let's have a look at this mid-priced one for $580. This would be competing with Trunked Under Lithium's 5K. Uh, Slightly higher price, but not much. And So it's 10 inches wide, 6 1/4 and 6 1/2. That's relatively small. It looks like, okay, so yeah, now see, here's the thing, okay? It This is made out of plywood. Um, is that bad? No, but I mean, it. I, I mean, will it work? Yes, it looks like something that I would make in my garage, though. That's kind of a thing, and this one has the same appearance. That doesn't mean it's not a good battery. Not dumping on that, but damn, man, the presentation. I mean, look at this. This is this is made out of plywood. I don't know. Yeah, and what we're talking about voltage wise. So we're looking at 14.6 max. That's 0.2 volts lower. What else we got in here? Any more information? And 12 cells, LiPo 4. I mean, it's plywood. It's just plywood, man. I don't. Let me go over Trunk Thunder Lithium real quick. And see, this is a similar battery to that, but so here, this is a similar battery to that, and there's not. You can see the difference. This is an ABS plastic case. It's like half-inch thick. Here's with the top removed. Now you tell me which you think would be a better battery. Okay, this. You see what's inside here? That's in the top. You see these huge ass pure copper bars. You see this ABS plastic case. Okay. Uh, versus this, where they have holes that stuff. Which one would you think would be the better battery? That's my question to you is that. And could there be the same support inside? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't know. But I'm just saying, okay? I'm just putting it out there. That's my first take. That's what I see. Doesn't mean that they're bad. Uh, you can safely underfuse a wire. Yes, absolutely, 100%. Speaking of lithium, what's good for 12 volt max? Probably 14. Okay, got to reread this one. Speaking of lithium, what's good for 12 volts max? Probably 14 from an alternator. Uh, to an AGM battery? Um, that's confusing. What's good for 12 volt from an alt to an AGM battery? I'm trying to leave out the parts that are breaking my brain. I'm not sure where lithium comes into this question. If we take that part off and we just say what's good for 12 volts max, probably 14, an alt gauge wire would work good for that. Um, I'm trying to figure that out. But yeah, if you're looking for a good lithium battery in that 14 volt range, the Truck Thunder Lithium 5K and the 10K will both handle 14.8 max charging. And they're good for anything, anything that charges over like 13.5, 13.6 is going to be fine to keep them charged. So hopefully that answered your question. I got it. I found it. Damn. I found, yeah, I found something else first though. That was pretty funny. Like, oh, I'm so glad I wasn't screen sharing. They said they're good batteries. They take a long time, but they take a long time to get there, close to 2 months per order. Yeah, sometimes it is. I'm talking about lithium, and that's because you just can't keep up with the amount of orders. But yes, excellent batteries. Skip. Okay. No headway bad. We don't do headway. Headway bad. Bad headway. Headway make fire. I mean, if you just want to, get insurance on your vehicle and then burn it down, there you go. Perfect solution. But I guarantee you they'll be looking for lithium when they investigate the fire, and you might not qualify for your insurance. Uh, but guys, we've gone on for almost 3 hours tonight, and you guys have been awesome. Y'all have any more questions for me? Any more arguments? I love to argue. A good argument's healthy because that makes you think about your own position and consider other positions, which means we learn and grow together. I don't. I have no problem with ignorance because ignorance simply means you don't know something, and we all start out that way, and we have to work our way through life. Dealing with that as part of our motivator to continue forward, um, trying to eliminate as much ignorance as possible in your mind and fill in the gaps, at least with something that works, right? The problem is there's a whole lot of people out there that want to put information in your head that's going to solve a problem, but it's going to solve a problem in such a way that they profit from it. And I don't want to be that person. I recommend the stuff that I recommend because it's good stuff. That's the reason. I deal with those people because I like the company and I like the product that they make. Um, I've had many people, many people, many companies approach me for brand deals and stuff. I get every single day. I turn down multiple brand deals. I've turned down bid deals from really big companies. So yeah, that's the thing. It's for me. It's all about what's the best product, what's the best solution, not what's the best amount of money I can make. Right? It's what's the best solution first. Jason sent me a link. Oh, that's cool. That works kind of. I guess that's a bass knob too. I'll show you guys the thing he sent me. He was talking about. So this little guy for 229 bucks looks pretty cool. Um, and then I believe that could absolutely work as a bass knob. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable putting an epicenter in my vehicle because I run so much rebase stuff. But I'm guessing that you could bypass that functionality, which would mean you'd basically turn the whole thing into a glorified bass knob. Still got potential though. Uh, I'd want to read more about it, find out more about it. So it's got balanced outputs, clean noise free signal transfer for high end aftermarket source. Okay. Max output level 10 volts. That's nice. It's got two line level output or inputs, two speaker level inputs, 40 volts. That's actually a lot of power to go into it. So it'll handle, it would easily handle a stock car audio system playing into it as inputs. Okay, that's cool. Nice low THD. That's good. Infrasonic filter at 15 to 24 hertz or bypass. Yeah. And a frequency from 10K to 30 kilohertz. That's way up there. 10 hertz, 30 kilohertz. I don't ever play below about 20. I'll take that back. I have been known to play like 14 and 16, but only for short little things and at lower power. I can play full power down to 24 hertz pretty easily without wrecking anything. That's usually about what I play to. Pretty cool though. Let's see here. Kindling, headway. Okay. Question. How much does 4 of them 15s cost with my code? Are we talking about go. We're talking about the subs I run. I'll pull them up for you. Subwoofers. I'll show you how easy this is. The V2s, 15s, V2 15 Oblivions right here. Okay. So we'll just go to the V2 15s and we'll change that to 4, add them to cart. I got to take some other stuff out of my cart because I have more stuff in my cart because I do stuff like this all the time. So we'll just change that to 0. We'll change that to 0. We'll change that to 0. So now we have 4 of these guys. And then we go to, where's that thing at? There it is. So right now we're sitting at 1139.97. If we put in CAE and then hit enter, that should, oh yeah, I got to agree to the sale. Where's it at? What's the thing I had to do to get that number to go to change? Okay, I agree. That's it. Now let's see if it'll do it. I don't think it. I don't remember why it's doing that. Okay, there it is right there. So yeah, that entering my code knocks $59.99 off. So we go from $11,199 to $11,039. So 4 of them is less than $1,200. And you too can bust windows. Oh, I don't have the thing up on the thing. I'll show them to you. Sorry. I didn't realize this is it. So I got 4 of them in the cart. And the total is $11,99.96. And then after my code, right here, CAE, you just put it in right over here. The code, the amount is $1,139.97. That's all there is to it, man. Bob's your uncle. See here. Still a pretty good deal, I think. And that's right now I'm putting the equivalent of 4,000 watts on each one of those subs. It's not actually that much after rise, but that's what it would be if you were doing all the numbers on a piece of paper. It'd be approximately 4,000 watts per sub. So I'm doing 8K on 2 subs and another 8K on another 2 subs. Any more questions from folks? I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it tonight. It's been fun. You guys are a hoot. We're going to learn about bass knobs. That's one of my next things we're going to talk about is bass knobs. I've been really digging in and learning as much as I can about them. And we're going to cover some different bass knobs because that's become a thing. If I find it frustrating, then I know you guys will too. So we're going to work through it, and then I'm going to share what I learned all cumulatively with you guys. But for now, it's been a wonderful night. All we got left to say is let's get the duck out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. Out here banging up and down the street, slamming it to the ground. Subwoofers are getting loud. You can feel the booming the show. Hours charging, amps are amping, gonna let the woofers blow. Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. And another one goes, and another one goes, and another one bites the dust. We got more at home. Another one bites the dust. Eyes are glowing and the amps smoking. Subs are cherry red. Let me keep jamming, gotta keep the bass slamming. Gonna go hard till they're dead. Full power, gotta let it go. 20 hertz in the floating air. Sparks are flying, voice cords are frying, and the smoke is in the air. Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. And another one goes, and another one goes, and another one bites the dust. Hey, we got more at home. Another one bites the dust. Got it. Got it. Ooh.
Peace, guys. Y'all have a good night.